There are things you cannot unknow once you have seen them. I have had 20 years to make peace with that, and I will tell you that the peace is real, partial and slow, but real. It does not erase the shape of what I saw. What I am about to tell you happened in October of 2001 in my apartment on Rector Street in Lower Manhattan, 8 blocks from where the World Trade Center had stood. This is not a ghost story. It is not exaggerated. Debris from the towers, and more than debris, was recovered from apartments, rooftops, and streets across the surrounding neighborhood for months afterward. That is in the public record. I was one of the people who found something. I need you to know that before I begin. Stay with me through the ordinary parts, because they matter. The ordinary parts are what make the rest of it real. I was 22 years old. I had moved to the city about 14 months earlier, and I was still in that first apartment phase where even a leaky faucet feels like an event. Rector Street, studio apartment, 4th floor, a futon I had hauled up the stairs myself, a coffee maker with a cracked carafe I kept meaning to replace. I would leave a half-drunk mug on the table most mornings because I was always almost late for something. I was 22 and I was happy, genuinely, quietly happy. And I had no way of knowing that in less than a month I would be someone I barely recognized. September 11th was a Tuesday, and the sky that morning was that particular fall blue, clear and high and very sharp, the kind of sky that makes New York feel like a gift. I was still in pajamas at 8:45, standing at my window with coffee. The first thing I registered as wrong was sound, a low, tearing roar that I felt in my chest before I understood it as sound at all. Then the glass in the building across the street seemed to shudder. I looked north. An enormous column of dark smoke was climbing into all that blue from the North Tower. I stood completely still for a moment, unable to make what I was seeing fit inside anything I had ever known. By the time the second plane hit, I was half-dressed, jeans in one shoe and the other in my hand, when the second impact came through the walls, the building itself flinching. My neighbor from down the hall was in the stairwell saying, we have to go," in this very quiet and very steady voice. I left the mug on the table. I left the lights on. I left the door unlocked because I thought I was stepping out for an hour. I did not take my passport. I did not take the photographs on my desk. I took my keys out of habit, walked down 4 flights, and stepped out into the street without looking back up at my floor. I did not go back for 37 days. I walked north up Broadway with hundreds of others, and by the time I reached Canal Street, both towers had fallen. I know that now, though I did not register it as distinct from everything else I was failing to absorb. I ended up at a friend's apartment in the West Village, and then with my parents upstate, and then back in the city, existing in a kind of suspended present. In those weeks, I began to understand, from news reports and from people who had been closer, what a debris field of that scale actually meant. What happens when that much material collapses from that height in a dense neighborhood? What spreads outward? What travels? What comes to rest in places no one expected? In mid-October, a notice reached me, by phone first, then by a letter, forwarded to my parents' address. Residents of certain blocks south of Chambers Street were being permitted brief supervised returns to collect essential documents and medications. You would be accompanied by a National Guard escort. You would have a limited amount of time. I called the number, gave my name, and 3 days later I was on a train heading back into the city for the first time since I had walked away from my unlocked door. I kept telling myself I was going for the passport, for the photographs, practical things. I kept not asking myself the other question, why I needed to see it with my own eyes, because I was not ready to answer it. The soldier who met me at the building entrance was young, younger than me, I think, or maybe just young in the way that composure can make a person seem ageless. He was quiet and professional, and he had that particular form of kindness that asks nothing back from you. He told me I had 20 minutes, We went up the 4 flights because the elevator wasn't running, and in the stairwell, the smell reached me, thick and mineral, and unlike anything I had a word for, something that settled at the back of the throat and did not leave. I had to stop on the second landing and breathe through my mouth before I could keep climbing. The door to my apartment was how I had left it, unlocked, slightly ajar, as though I really had only stepped out for an hour. I pushed it open, and the light was wrong immediately. Too much of it from the wrong direction. The back of the apartment was bright where it should have been dim, and after a moment I understood that the window in the back room had been breached. Dust covered every surface, gray and fine and deep, settled the way ash settles over a long time, not like something recent, but something geological. And papers I did not recognize lay scattered across the floor. Pages from offices I had never been in, carried through the broken window on the morning of the 11th. I stood in the main room longer than I should have, just taking it in. The apartment was still recognizably mine. Same furniture, same arrangement, the same small domestic geography I had lived inside for 14 months, but all of it made foreign by the gray. My coffee mug was still on the table, under its coat of dust, exactly where I had left it 37 days before. The thought that came, not grief yet, not horror, just a flat and strange recognition, was that the air settling into every surface of this room had passed through something I could not look at directly and name. The soldier had stayed in the hallway, giving me space. I would be grateful for that later. I was not grateful yet. I crossed the main room toward the back. The passport was in the desk drawer, in the room I used as a home office, the far end of the apartment, sectioned off with a bookshelf and a standing lamp. The door to that room was closed. I must have pulled it shut on my way out that morning without thinking, the automatic gesture of someone who expected to come back. The gap underneath the door glowed, brighter than the rest of the apartment, more direct, which I told myself was October light through the broken window. I put my hand on the handle. The metal was gritty with settled ash. I turned it. The door swung inward, and the hallway light moved ahead of me into the room. The window frame was still there, but the glass was gone, and cold October air moved through the opening. The dust on this floor had been disturbed, less even, more unsettled, redistributed as though air had moved through here with considerable force. I was 2 steps in when I saw it. I want to be precise because precision is the only honest thing I have left to offer about that moment. I did not have a second of not understanding. There was no gradual assembly of information. I looked and I knew, fully and completely, before I had any power to stop myself from knowing. I know what an airplane seat looks like. Everyone does. The shape of the headrest, the particular angle of a recline, the specific stillness of something designed for motion that is now completely, permanently still. My mind completed the picture before I had any say in it. I will not give you detail beyond what I'm about to say, not because I do not remember, but because some things belong only to the people they happen to, and I am not the one they happen to. What I will tell you is this: it was a passenger cabin seat, and it had come through the window and come to rest against the far wall of my home office. And it was not empty. I made a sound I had never made before and have not made since. Not a scream exactly, lower than that, less controlled. The kind of sound that comes from somewhere beneath language and before thought. I stumbled back into the doorframe. I could not look away and I could not keep looking, and for several seconds I was suspended between those two things at once. And then I heard boots on the floor of the main room, quick, heavy, purposeful. The soldier was there. He said my name. I still do not know how he had it ready, but he said it clearly. And the sound of my own name in that room was the first thing I had heard that I could hold on to. He did not look past me into the room, or if he did, he managed it without letting me see him do it, without making it something I would have to witness him experiencing too. He stepped deliberately into the space between me and the open door, put a firm and steady hand on my shoulder and said, "Come on, we're going, let's go." The quietest possible voice, nothing in it but direction. And he turned me around. I'm still grateful for the care in that gesture, the physical deliberateness of reorienting someone away from what they should not have to keep seeing. We went down the stairs. I held the handrail the whole way. Neither of us said a word. Outside, the air was cold and gray, and I sat down on the front step of the building. I did not have my passport. I had not opened the desk drawer. I never went back for it. I renewed it years later at a federal office in Brooklyn, sitting in a plastic chair under fluorescent light, and when the clerk asked if I was all right, I said yes, just tired. I gave up the apartment lease 3 weeks after the visit. My landlord waived the breaking fee without discussion. I think he already knew. I moved to a sublet in Carroll Gardens and then to a proper apartment in Cobble Hill, and I rebuilt the routines one by one. The coffee maker, the morning light, the small domestic structure that holds a life together. The rebuilding was real. The life it made is real. I want to be honest about that. But there are things that do not return to their original shape. They rebuild. They just rebuild with a seam in them, a place where the repair is visible if you know to look. For me, it is chairs, not every chair. A specific combination, a headrest at a certain height, a certain angle of recline, seen from a doorway or from across a room I'm just entering. Hotels mostly, and airports, which carries its own particular cruelty. I will be walking and catch one at the edge of my vision, and something in me stops before my mind does. An older, faster system, an alarm set in October of 2001 that has never been fully cleared. I go still. I look somewhere else until it passes. It always passes. It never stops. What I found in that room has been documented. The public record, news accounts, survivor testimony, oral history projects, includes evidence of debris and, in certain cases, the dead themselves, carried outward by the force of the collapse into the streets and buildings of the surrounding neighborhood. I was not supposed to be the one who found what I found. No one is supposed to be. But in a debris field spanning blocks in a city that dense, someone always is, and all of us who became witnesses in an ordinary moment on an ordinary errand, we kept living afterward. That is not a small thing, to keep going, with honesty and with care, as someone who saw what they were never meant to see. That is its own quiet, daily act. I do not tell this story to frighten you. I tell it because it happened, and because the people it happened to deserve to be remembered with honesty and with care. All of them. The ones whose names are inscribed in the memorial, and the one who came to rest in my back room on Rector Street, and the young soldier who turned me around and walked me down the stairs without a word, and the 22-year-old who went up for her passport and came back down without it, and has been carrying this ever since. If you are still with me at the end of this, thank you. It helps more than I can say to not carry it alone. If you want to return to stories told this carefully, I will be here.
That's your dose of dread for tonight. Sweet dreams.